So in the last devlog, I was done with the passage area and I was quite happy with it. Now that the passage area was complete, I could finally move on to the final room of my environment, the waste disposal room. The initial idea was to have a huge open room that you walk into, and there was supposed to be a flat platform that you can move around on, as seen in the previous block out in Unreal. But for the final level, I wanted there to be some sort of a shock factor involved in the final reveal. I had the idea that the player would walk into a dark cabin with no idea what lies ahead of him. And when the player interacts with the control board, the roof shutter will slowly open and let the light pour in. And the hope is that I wanted the light interaction to be different for this final room, which is why I decided to go for this shutter idea where the roof shutter would open slowly and kind of reveal the entire area, which would hopefully amplify the shock factor the player feels. So with this in mind, I collected my final references in PureRef and started modeling the cabin that the player is supposed to walk in. For the references, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's some sort of a waste facility. So there are a lot of references I got where there would be a huge concrete room with a ton of waste stacked in it, and there are usually cranes in these rooms that are operated through a cabin somewhere inside the waste room itself. So I decided to first build the cabin that the player will walk into, as that is the first point of contact for the final room, and I wanted to have that complete so I can take it in Unreal and stand in this cabin to look around and get an idea of how the view looks like in this final room. I really like the idea of having these huge pipes running through this incinerator room, and it kind of broke the floor and gave it a little variation. I liked how this room was coming together because there was a lot of iteration that went into this room. There was not just a single reference that I liked and picked up for this room. I had to mix and match a lot of ideas and work on a lot of iterations until the room made sense to me. The assets that were going to be in focus for the final rooms were definitely the claws or the cranes that would be used to pick up the scrap that is in this room. So, and these cranes were definitely the most complex assets in terms of the modeling, at least in my entire environment. So I had a lot of fun modeling these out. For the crane, I textured the crane in Substance Painter, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. For the mannequin bodies laying down in this room, it took some while to figure out how exactly I wanted to approach this. So my vision with this scrap pile was to have dismantled robot parts so that it would give the impression that parts from these robots were harvested and were disposed in this area. I exported the mannequin to 3ds Max and broke down the parts into different objects. I then duplicated these parts randomly and simulated them using the Mass FX tools in 3ds Max. I used the walls of the incinerator rooms as a collision for the simulation so that I would have accurate position of these meshes in my final level in Unreal. So after I was done with the incinerator room, I moved straight to modeling the warehouse. I used the blockouts from Unreal as a reference to model all the assets. First, I started with the upper floor as that was the bulk of what was remaining. I modeled a single office section for the upper floor, and it's just a modular section that I'm repeating in Unreal. As I was testing the game, I realized that not having a UI really made it inconvenient for the player. So I made a basic UI system with a main menu and the option to pause the game and restart it as well. I think having these small quality of life things really bring up the quality of the project. As you'll see in the gameplay of the current state of the game, you'll notice that I had to remove the robots because I simply did not have enough time to model the enemy characters, and I had to cut them out to make the deadline for this project. I also had to cut the starting room, the store room where the player was supposed to spawn in, and instead of that, now the player just spawns on the upper floor outside the offices. You'll notice that there are a lot of props from the initial blockout that have not been modeled in the final version of the warehouse as well, as simply because I just did not have the time for those assets. As of right now, all the interactions in the game are automatic. The elevator and the roof shutter use a similar simple system where they are initial and they have I have set variables for their initial position and their final position, and I'm using a timeline to lure between these two positions depending on if the player is standing inside their collision box. So in the next devlog, I'll focus on adding proper interaction systems to my game and adding the final polish before I submit this project. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching and I hope you liked it.